Jerit Pogue has served as the Region 3 chairman for 7 years, directing the most successful junior men's regional program in the country. He has also been instrumental in seeking change in how judges are selected and gives his insights into what changes are needed to move the U.S. judging selection procedures forward. For those new here, I'm Kensley, the host of Neutral Deductions, a podcast all about men's gymnastics. This is episode 69, where Jerit Pogue gives us his insights into running the most dominant junior men's area in the country, plus his own take on what needs to change within the judges moving forward.
This is the Neutral Deductions podcast, men's gymnastic news, coverage, and analysis.
Jerit, thank you so much for being here.
Sure, thanks for having me. Been looking forward to come on for a while.
So Jerit, can you give us a quick introduction of who you are and a little bit of the background of how we met?
So my name is Jerit Pogue. I live in Houston, Texas. My wife and I own a gym called Alpha Omega Gymnastics. Through the grace of God, has been open for the past 23 years. So it's been very excited to do that. We have 7 kids, 2 of them who compete in gymnastics currently, and I coach both of them, which is always an interesting. Those of you out there that are dad/coach, you know what kind of a fun dynamic that is. But I became the Region 3 chairman in 2017. It's actually a pretty funny story of how that happened. It was basically I was the last man standing who wanted the job. I'd actually run for it the term before and lost. I ran in quite a few elections that I lost. I think I lost way more elections than I ever won. But I always wanted to be involved in gymnastics, and really being the Region 3 chairman was the one that I really wanted to participate in, just to help kind of lead the country and lead gymnastics going through the country. So I was finally elected that position in 2017 and have been doing it for the past 7 years. You and I met when you were on your other podcast, and you were the men's gymnastics expert. And I was like, who is this girl? And so I believe I reached out to you on Facebook, and you and I just got connected, and you happened to live in Texas at the time, and you were going to be at the WOGA meet. And so you and I actually met then. And I believe that was when you had done, was that right after you'd done something to your leg and your foot? And so you were on crutches hobbling around. And so I introduced you some of the other Texas people that you knew, a few of them, but that was the first time that you and I met in person, but kind of became friends and have been in contact, off and on, pretty frequently ever since. So.
Yeah, us having met has been actually like one of the joys of my life. And I wish I could tell you how many people that I have met from Jessica's comment on gymnastics saying that I was the men's gymnastics expert. Just for those who have been around for a long time, I never claimed to be the men's gymnastics expert. I was awarded that title, and I wish you could have seen my eyes during that podcast. Like, my eyes got really wide. And I actually had several people in the men's community reach out to me because I had never been a judge. Like, I obviously didn't compete within men, and no one knew who I was really outside of the Michigan contingent. And they were like, who are you? And how are you the men's gymnastics expert? So I've actually met a lot of people in the community just from Jessica having named me the men's gymnastics expert.
Well, it's stuck, and that's like I said, no publicity is bad publicity, so you've come a long way as the men's gymnastics expert, I will say.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit more about being the Region 3 chairman. Like, what all does that entail?
Oh, gosh, it's a lot. It's a lot of hats. First thing I'll say is that I'm very, very fortunate that I had some great people already in place. In Region 3, kind of how the region has run. Tom Meadows, who I'm sure everybody knows, has been kind of our elite team coordinator since early 2000s, and he kind of pestered Gil Elsas, who was a longtime Region 3 chairman and chairman of the at the time JOPC. And Tom was involved with the region and just kept telling Gil, hey, we need to do more. We need to do more. We need to do more. And finally, Gil broke down and said, okay, fine. What do you ever want to do? You just do it. So Tom started, camps in our region and really started to develop our kind of elite team system. So as when I took over, things that already been running in place for 10, 12 years. But my role is really just to communicate with the coaches, figure out what their needs are, and to make those things happen. So hopefully the coaches in Region 3 will say that I've done a good job of that over the past 7 years. But I'm really like the logistics guy. I mean, that's the big part of my role, is keep the website running, make sure everybody gets entered into nationals, make sure everybody knows the rules, knows the documents. So that's kind of on a regional level what I do, which is one part of the job. The second part of the job, which is kind of sometimes a little bit bigger, is just running, being on the men's development program committee and keeping everything going as far as that goes. As we had brand new rules this year with the new quad and new technical sequence. And I think my official title was the liaison to the club track, or no, sorry, not the club track, to the national track, which meant I had to get the groups together to come up with all the compulsory rules, decide what we were going to do, make sure all that got written down. I worked with Raj a lot to get those things done, all the optional rules. So I had a lot of Zoom calls from the summer through early fall trying to get all that done with the new rules, and we're still having Zoom calls to this day. Shout out to my good buddy Paul Evat, who is with the NGJA. He's our DP vice president. So whenever there's a question about the rules, he calls me or Raj, and we talk it out and try to figure out, what kind of clarification we need to make, or if we forgot about something, we need to do that. So that has kind of been a never-ending process. But there's 6 regional chairmen, and we meet every week. We have a standing Zoom call every Tuesday. And all 6 of us, most of us are on all the time, get together for an hour and talk about, okay, what do we need to do? How are things going? What's going on in each region? What do we need to do in the country? So it's really it's a never-ending job but I love doing it. I love being involved. I love being able to kind of drive the program and have my opinions heard, which I have a lot of, and really helping out. So
there's a couple of new listeners that we have post the Olympic year. So there's a couple names I want to clarify, and then I'm going to have you clarify what are the different regions and how did those recently change. So for those, Jerit just said Tom Meadows. So Tom Meadows is one of, if not the greatest junior coach in the country. He's coached many Olympians, from Jonathan Horton. He was Asher Hong's junior coach. Just truly,
Chris Books, Raj Basar.
So many of the great gymnasts from the U.S. have come out of this gym, and so he is out of a gym in the Houston area called Cypress Gymnastics. So that's who he was referring to. And then Raj Bhavsar is currently the head of the junior program at the national level, and he was on the 2008 Olympic team, won a bronze medal with the team there. So just a couple of names for those who are newer that you should know who they are. Now, Jerit recently spoke about the different regions and how the chairmen get together and talk through how to maybe interpret the rules or what they're doing in each different area. So there was recently a giant remix of the entire country. So can you talk about how many regions there used to be, and then how many regions there are now, and then what does your region particularly include?
So we went from 9 regions last year to 6 regions this year, to kind of consolidate, kind of help some of the smaller regions to have more athletes, to have more coaches, to help things out. It was kind of a contentious thing. Not everybody wanted to be realigned, but everybody, I think, has now gotten on board. So we have the 6 regions. We are still Region 3. We picked up New Mexico. So now we have 7 states in our region, which are Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. Is that 7?
And Region 3 has been the most dominant region at the Junior Elite Cup, which is the event that now simultaneously happens with Winter Cup. And how many of the last, 12 titles have you won?
So there's been, as far as anybody can remember, there's some little bit of, argument of how many official Elite Team Cups we actually have had. I think the number is 12. There have been 12. Started out having them at the Olympic Training Center the first few years, and then it moved to be with American Cup, and then when American Cup went away, it went with Winter Cup. So there's been, to best of everybody's knowledge, 12 competitions. We have won 9 of the 12. So to say that we are dominant is an understatement. Again, I like to brag and talk smack to all the other regional chairmen, particularly my good friend Kevin White in Region 4, who has never won it. Used to be Region 8. They've never won it. So we get to we talk a lot of smack to him, but really it's nothing that I've done. Like I said, I'm a logistics guy on that trip. My job is to, find places to eat, pay for the hotel rooms, get everybody checked in, buy airline tickets. We really have just a great coaching staff and a great system and group of athletes to do it. But yeah, the Elite Team Cup, if your listeners have never been there and experienced it, and I know you've only been, how many have you been to? I know you came to Vegas the first time with Winter Cup.
I've been to 3 Elite Team Cups.
Okay. And the crowd there does not do it justice, because it's always a goofy kind of time frame within. Probably the biggest crowd we ever had was in 2020, right before COVID hit, when we did it in Vegas the first time with Winter Cup. And there was a decent crowd there. The subsequent years that we've had with Winter Cup, it's been, the crowds have been very small. But the excitement on the floor is incredible. I mean, it's probably just as exciting as NCAA championships, as far as just the level of the gymnastics these athletes doing. Number one is incredible, and 2, this is the first time these athletes, for most of them, are doing anything like this as a team competition. And this is the only competition in the junior program that really utilizes a team format. And if you talk to these athletes, like I know, DTB Cup just ended, and we had, our junior team got second, and all those junior guys had competed. Well, most of the junior guys, all of them, have competed on their region's Elite Team Cup prior to that competition, and all of them will tell you that experience of being on a team and going in there and having the pressure to hit a routine, not for yourself but for the team. You can't simulate that. There's no other competition across the country that simulates that environment and that type of competition. So that's why we all believe, the regional chairman, all the elite coaches I've talked to, every athlete that has been involved with it is still, will say that this is, the Elite Team Cup. Those athletes who've been a part of the Elite Team Cup will tell you it was one of the best competitions they were at in their junior program. And you can go guys all the way through the NCAA, and that I talk to all the time, and they still, hey, Region 3, and so they're excited. The athletes who come out and come through Region 3, being on the elite team, there's really something special to them. So I'm very excited to be a part of it, and it's fun to win. I'm not going to lie. It's fun to dominate and to talk smack to Kevin White.
I do think with the Elite Team Cup in particular, you are really seeing the next generation of NCAA athletes. A lot of them go on to be on the senior national team and end up doing really special things in elite competition. So if you're wanting to know who the up and coming athletes are, it's a great competition to go to. Now, as you mentioned, the Elite Team Cup is currently happening with Winter Cup, and you have also hosted a meet as a Winter Cup qualifier. So I think a lot of people are interested in the logistics and the behind the scenes of how do you even get to be a Winter Cup qualifier, because they don't have the same competitions every year.
You want the real answer?
Sure.
Politics, 100%. No, there's a bid process, and every year. So I've put in a bid since they've had the process now 4 years in a row, to be a Winter Cup qualifier. I was awarded it once, and I was awarded a conditional bid this year to be a qualifier, which the condition is I have to anchor the equipment into the floor. I can't use what they call freestanding equipment with the weight system. That is something new from USA Gymnastics, that they are not going to budge on, apparently. So I'm working with the convention center to hopefully get permission for me to drill holes in their concrete floor in the convention center and anchor the equipment down. If I cannot get that done, my being able to be a Winter Cup qualifier is kind of in jeopardy. But yeah, it's a bid process. It goes to the NPC. You fill out the application, and then the NPC talks about it, and they decide what's going to be best. I didn't get a whole lot of insight from this year as far as the discussion, other than reading the minutes that is published for everybody. Just kind of said that they were really looking geographically, trying to get one in different parts of the country. And I was fortunate because I was the only meet in what I guess they called it the South. So geographically, it makes sense to have one in Houston. My meet has had a history of having elite level guys come in and compete. A little bit of history of if they don't know, my meet is called the Galveston Island Winter Beach Blast Invitational. That's a mouthful. We've hosted that meet. This year will actually be our 13th year, so we've been doing it for a while, not as long as a lot of other meets across the country, but I've been doing it for a long time. And the goal for me putting on that meet from the very beginning was really just to bring all my friends to Galveston and have fun. And I was like, all right, how am I going to pay for that? It's like, oh, we'll host the competition. So I hire all my friends to come and help me run the meet. And we've gotten, to say, well, I think we've gotten pretty good at it. I've got a pretty good crew of people helping run the meet. I know you've come out a couple times and covered it. And so I think we do a good job. We always try to get better. But we've done not only that meet, but several other regional competitions. And I hosted Westerns a couple years ago, and I'm also hosting boys Westerns next year in Galveston. But that's kind of the goal of our competition, is to really just have a different kind of unique, fun atmosphere. It's very early in the season. Next year it'll be January 9th through 11th. So I don't want high stress. I don't want a lot of pressure. I mean, a lot of the guys coming to the event are just really, getting their routines under them, and to come in and do a meet in a convention center on equipment that's, on hard landing surfaces that they're probably not training in every day at their gym. It's a different atmosphere. So that's why I want to try to kind of keep it light for those guys, to make sure that it's relaxed.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to a lot of meets, and I will say truthfully, it is one of the most well-run meets I've ever been to. And the fact that there's catering there for all of the staff, the volunteers, the coaches, the media, it really is next level. And it reminds me kind of the old days of the USA Gymnastics meets, when media used to come in and get a full meal, and then now post bankruptcy there's no money for food, and it's nice to have a meet to go to where there is still food provided for those who are coming to work the event. Now, I would love for you to expand. You said that to get a Winter Cup qualifier was politics. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's the NPC voting. There's 6 members of the NPC who vote on where they want to go. And so everybody on that NPC, I'm not going to say that they all have their own agendas, but I've, just knowing how committees like this work, it's sometimes you come in and the strongest voice in the room is what everybody leads to. And I think that I respect everybody on the NPC. We have, a couple new members this year who came on. And so there is there's some new blood on the NPC, I guess, that haven't been on with Matt Henry and Tom Meadows stepping in, this fall. And those are guys who previously have not been on there before. So it's really just, yeah, like when you put in the bid, like you really never know. And you never know what they're looking at. You never know what they're, a lot of times, like historically, most of the qualifiers have gone to meets that the majority of that NCAA teams go to. This past year, that was even what they said in the minutes. That, oh, yeah, we gave it to these 4 meets because historically these were meets that hosted NCAA competitions at their events, and coaches are used to that, and they already made their budget and they're already going. So we're going to make these 4 meets the qualifiers. That's literally what they said in their minutes, which I get it. I understand. My meet is not a meet that a lot of college teams historically have come to. They don't come down to Houston for my competition. Because it's just, it just hasn't had that. We haven't done that. And I haven't worked for that. I haven't solicited college coaches and said, hey, come down to my meet. That was never what I was going for. So in the past, it was really, that was kind of looking out for, because, it's been a lot of the guys going to qualifiers to try to qualify to win a cup are NCAA athletes. But there are a lot of guys who aren't in NCAA who are trying to qualify. And so that has kind of been, some of those meets have had to kind of add to their sessions, that they have to, Stanford Open and Windy City have had to they've had NCAA sessions, but that they've had to open them up to individuals to come to those meets also, because everybody needs to have a chance to qualify through those competitions. So there is a market for guys outside of the NCAA. We've got a lot of guys in Gym Act who are trying to, qualify as to Winter Cup, and they've gone to a couple of the qualifiers, and they're very excited about Beach Blast being a qualifier for this year, because I've had Gym Act teams in the past come to Beach Blast and compete and try to qualify to the event. So, when I say it's political, it's just really the guys on the NPC and kind of what lens they're looking at it through. What lens they're looking at. Are they looking through it at the lens of the entire program, or are they looking through it the lens of, okay, this is what's beneficial to the NCAA program? And I think that in the past, it has been looked at a lot through the lens of the NCAA, but I think now, especially this year, that is kind of turning around. And so we've got to do both. Like USA Gymnastics has got to figure out, okay, we need qualifiers that are work well for NCAA teams, but also work well for Gym Act teams and for individuals to come and qualify. So that's why I think it was good the way they looked at it as, let's look at it regionally and try to get one in each region of the country, so people can have an opportunity to come out and compete. So I'm very excited to be a qualifier this year, and hopefully I can convince I'm going to send this to the right people at the Galveston Island Convention Center and say, hey guys, because 2 years, I guess it was, we hosted it in 2024 was the last time we hosted it. And I promoted this guy as, hey, this is the first step of the Olympic qualification process. These guys, this is step one. You got to make it to Winter Cup to make it to. Now, it wasn't a lot of guys skipped that. They didn't have to go to qualifiers. I didn't go through the whole process, but I marketed it to those people and sold it as, hey, this is a somewhat of a qualifier to the Olympic team, because this is how guys make national team and get on there. So hopefully it works out. It works out this year.
I think one of the things that probably most of the listeners are going to be most interested to hear from you is about, I don't know if judging scandal is too strong of a word, but in the men's gymnastics community, there have been a lot of concerns about how judges are chosen, the caliber of judges at high-level meets, and potentially judges being looked over. And I know that you have been instrumental in the process of talking to higher ups, of making formal complaints about the process. So can you, in your own words, provide your opinion and maybe some evidence of what are some of the problems that you see in the men's judging community in the US, and how do you think that these problems need to be fixed or addressed?
Okay, so this is a very complicated issue, and I'm going to qualify this, number one, with these are my opinions. These are the opinions of Jerit Pogue. These are not the opinions of USA Gymnastics. This is not the opinion of me as Region 3 chairman. These are my own personal opinion. That's qualifier number one. Qualifier number two, I am good friends with a lot of judges, with a lot of the judges nationally that are running the NGJA, running the organization. And some of them, when I complain about things, take it personally and get mad at me. And I'm like, guys, look, this is not personal. This is not me saying you are doing a bad job. This is, I think the system can be better. And my whole goal is to make the system better. So to kind of start, I want, kind of tell you, my own history. Like I started out as a judge. When I opened my gym in 2003, I had basically a boys team coach. So I kind of transitioned from coaching on the men's side to being a gym owner. And I was like, well, how am I going to stay involved in competitive gymnastics while I'll start judging? So in 2003, I started judging and kind of quickly, not to say quickly, but I rose up through the judging ranks. And I was a brevet judge for 3 cycles. I was a category 3. All 3 cycles, I scored high enough on the test the first year I took it to be what they call the fast track category 3 to get there. So not to toot my own horn, but I was a decent judge. I knew the rules. I did a good job. I was selected as a national apparatus leader in the Junior Olympic program on rings for a couple years. So I kind of rose up through the judging ranks, but it was never my goal to be a high-level judge. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed but it was my way to be involved, to stay involved with the sport. But I met a lot of judges, and I had a lot of cool experiences getting to go to competitions and getting to judge at nationals. And I never really got the opportunity to judge NCAA meets. Which was one reason why I never really I knew I was never going to rise through the ranks, just because it just where I live and just different things. And at the time it was, it just wasn't going to be easy for me to get to judge those NCAA competitions, which at the time I was told, well, if you don't judge NCAA, you're not going to really get to judge USA championships. And so I knew that my path to judging was kind of hit a roadblock. And so that was one thing when I started looking at this is I wanted to change. I was like, it shouldn't matter. Like if I'm a good judge, I'm a good judge. It shouldn't matter that I live in Houston and it's expensive for me to go judge an NCAA meet. So coaches don't want to bring me in to judge those meets. And that shouldn't be the roadblock to me being able to judge. And again, this was 2012 when I was doing this. So, 13 years ago. So a lot has changed and gotten better since then. Well, but that was part of my motivation.
I think that we are still seeing these issues. Very recently, the Michigan-Nebraska dual meet happened, and there are not a lot of category or brevet judges that live in that region. You have national level judges, and due to budget concerns, typically schools are not willing to fly in or have people come from long distances because there may not be the budget for it. They just simply the athletic directors haven't awarded them the money to bring in the higher level judges. So what you experienced back in 2012 is still absolutely a concern today.
Yeah, exactly. If I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, I would have gotten to judge all those in those high level meets because I would have had the opportunity to judge local NCAA competitions and then moved up through the ranks. So because for my own story, I knew I was never going to be able to rise up through the ranks. In 2021, 2022 is when I really started, I don't know what the right word is, pursuing, Tom Meadows, we mentioned before, he likes to say that I like to poke the bear. And I guess that's when we can say that I started poking the bear on this whole judging issue And I took it to everybody. I went to the higher up, the leadership of our local associations in Texas, of the NGJA, of USA Gymnastics. I filed a formal grievance, which was hence kind of turned away because I filed it incorrectly, and I could have filed it again under different things, but I just didn't because at the time they had already said they were starting the judging task force, which they did. So I had lots of conversations, and those were really spurred on by my friends. I was already out, and I was at the time the Region 3 chairman. I wasn't a judge, and kind of the, you know, in the judging organization, it is, and this is going to ruffle some feathers, but it's still the truth. You can't talk bad about the leadership and continue to rise up in the judges' ranks. It's still they want everybody to get along. They want everybody to get along, not make waves. And some of my friends made waves. They talked about, hey, this is not fair. I'm not getting assignments. I'm not getting this or that. And so they were kind of, you know, I don't know if held down is the right word, but, you know, when you have a local association that gets to make local assignments and then also makes assignments to NCAA meets in your area, then you have a national association that makes national assignments, you know, through USA Gymnastics. You have to have the right people have to say your name. And that has changed. That has changed with this last go around where, you know, one thing the task force worked on was, you know, you can nominate yourself. If you want to judge these meets, you can send in an application to say, hey, I want to judge. But that is a very new thing. That did not happen in the past.
Yeah, so let's dive into that. So maybe without naming names, can you go into why you initially submitted the complaint to USA Gymnastics, and then talk about maybe who the task force is comprised of and what their role was, because it's not actually limited to just men's gymnastics.
Well, yeah, that was what we were told. They were starting with men's and then moving on. So my personal grievance was because at the time I had some conflict with our local association leadership in Texas with our local association, and I did not want to join our local association. Well, the bylaws of the NGJA say you have to join the local association. At the time, it just said you had to join a local association. They changed the wording of it after I filed my grievance to now say you have to join the local association where you live. And if there's not a local association where you live, then it's kind of a gray area. But in my case, there was definitely a local association in Texas that I didn't want to join. I was kind of being a jerk about it, I admit it, but I was making a point. I was like, look, I like you guys, but I don't like what you're doing, and I think things need to be better. So I didn't join the association. I took my test. I went and took a course. I took a test. I got, I believe, 100 on it. You're very close to 100. It's an open book test, so it's not very hard. And I was a nationally rated judge, but I was not certified to judge because I would not pay the fee to my local association to join my local association. And I refused. I said, no. I said, I am not going to do it. I said, this is wrong. I don't agree with how you guys are running things. I don't agree with how things are. I'm not going to join the association. So I was not allowed to judge at all that year. And we had meet directors in Houston that were like, hey, I need you to judge. And I was like, well, I can judge. I'm available. But then the local association got wind of it, and they called those meet directors and said, no, Jerit is not an official judge. He's not certified. He's not certified to judge. You cannot use him to certify to judge. And the way the rules and policies are written with USA Gymnastics, they give the NGJA a lot of latitude to kind of be their own thing, and we can talk about that.
NGJA is the judging, the
correct, the
National
National Gymnastics Judges Association. So they said, and the leadership of the NGJA said, no, Jerit's not an official judge. He can't judge. He cannot judge anything. So these meet directors, even though I lived 15 minutes from these meets, could not use me to judge. Had to drive guys in from Fort Worth, so it was a mess, and it was. So I took it up the ladder to USA Gymnastics, and I actually made a proposal at the MDPC level that went to the MPC, and then the MPC kind of quashed our proposal and edited it a little bit, and basically now it says we have to work together and everybody has to get along and work things out. The issue now is, if we can't get along to work things out, who has the ultimate authority? And so we're still kind of dealing with that. But that was the genesis of my personal, I guess, beef with the Judges Association. I didn't agree with what my local association was doing. And so I felt like I should be able to join another association. And still, that didn't mean I was a bad judge. I still knew all the rules. I knew how to judge. I was on the committee that wrote all the rules. So I definitely knew how to judge them. But because I wouldn't join my local association, I was told I could not judge. So I filed a grievance. And basically, Ethics and Grievance from USA Gymnastics kind of kicked it out and said, well, because this was my screw up. I filed a grievance under the Texas right to work laws, that I did not have to join a union or another organization to work in Texas. I don't know if that's legal or not. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a workers' or a labor lawyer in Texas, but I kind of did my own research and thought, hey, well, this seems legit. Texas, you don't have to join a union in Texas to work. And but USA Gymnastics said, well, we're not getting involved in labor laws in Texas. Your recourse is to sue everybody and say they're violating your labor laws. But USA Gymnastics does have a right to participate clause. So I could have refiled my grievance under a right to participate, but there was another good friend of mine, she who will not be named, who a lot of people know who she is anyway. She filed a very extensive grievance with lots and lots and lots of details of years and years and years of history. And her and I had several meetings with people at USA Gymnastics, which really spurned the creation of the task force, the judging task force, because really when we brought these things to USA Gymnastics, they had no clue. We sat in the room with a very high up in USA Gymnastics at Nationals one year and explained to her how judges were selected, how things were done, and she had no idea. She did not know. And so because we started bringing things to their attention of, hey, these are good judges that aren't getting the opportunity to judge for whatever reason, so that's when they said, hey, we need to take a look at all of this, and we need to take a look at how this whole thing operates. And so it was a long time coming. It took about a year for them to kind of figure out and say, okay, we're going to start a task force. They interviewed a bunch of people and they created a task force. And the task force did work for about 6 months. They gave us a report back at Winter Cup last year. So in February of 2024, they gave us an update of these are what we found. These are the things that we think you should do better. The gentleman leading the task force is a man named Jonathan, who is a lawyer out of Alabama, who is kind of doing all this pro bono for USA Gymnastics. And he really did a lot of work and put the things together on the task force. And everybody kind of left that meeting last February as, okay, this stuff is great. These are great concepts. Now we need to actually drill down and make this stuff happening. Since that meeting, I've talked to other members of the task force. That task force has not met since then. They have not done anything else. They have not really addressed any of the things, the grievance, my grievance of, hey, I don't want to have to join a local association. And I feel like, it has too much power. I feel like sometimes USA Gymnastics lets the NGJA have too much power as far as how they do things. That really hasn't been addressed. Now, the selections this year were better. I still have no clue who was on the selection committee who selected the judges, how they all got chosen. That has not been published. I know there's no independent observer. We don't see minutes from the meeting. It's just, okay, here's the list of judges who were selected.
I want to come in and talk a little bit about some of the specifics of the problems that have happened in the past, some things that have been corrected, and then maybe let's get some more specific into what has yet to be corrected. So in the past, judges were allowed to nominate themselves for certain positions, and they were also the ones in charge of nominating other judges, so like the head of each judging association. So of course, who are they going to nominate first? They're going to nominate themselves because they want those judging opportunities. So that's something that has been rectified. So now,
kind of,
it has been made better that judges of a certain ranking can nominate themselves.
Correct. You can nominate yourself.
Rather than having to, let's say, suck up to the head of your organization to be nominated. So that's one positive thing. There have been other instances in the past where the people who are in charge of nominating judges, there has been nepotism involved, where they are nominating their own relatives over more qualified judging. Like that is something that was a problem. There were issues where judges who were good friends with who were selecting the judges for the elite panels at Olympic trials and US nationals, and they were judging there even though they were a lower level judge than other more qualified judges. So there's this long history of who are you buddies with, and that is how the judges were being selected rather than ensuring that the absolute best judges were on the floor. Now, there has, in the last year, been a turnover in leadership. And so it's been, less than a year, I think, since John Corbett has taken over the presidency. So I think one of the things that people are watching as part of his legacy is how much is he going to be able to change? How much is he going to adopt from this judging task force? And there's a big complication here because the NGJA has sort of been looking like USAG is the one who makes the rules and they're the ones who tell us what to do. And USA Gymnastics is going back to the NGJA saying, actually it's the NGJA who makes all of these decisions. And there's sort of this double pointing fingers back at each other, and it's sort of slowing the solution process from many people's perspectives in the community.
Yeah, it's a very strange, and I alluded to this before, dynamic between the NGJA and USA Gymnastics. Now, on the women's side, it's my understanding, and I'm not a women's judge, but talking to other people who are, USA Gymnastics makes up basically all the rules for women's judges. They are in complete control of how the women's organization is run. There is a local organization called NAJ, which is outside of USA Gymnastics, but their only job is really education. They do education for the judges. Now, on the men's side, the NGJA is a completely autonomous organization. And what the leadership has said and told me even recently is that, USA Gymnastics is a client of the NGJA. So that means that they're they get to say, well, this is what our fees are. This is what we do. And now I've been told, well, we all have to work together. But they say they're a client. And I've also been told, well, USA Gymnastics is not our only client. I was like, well, but they're your biggest. They represent about 95% of what you do. Without us meet directors and state and regional chairmen who put on these competitions, these judges in the NGJA don't really have anything to do. But the dynamic is that they're correct. They are their outside entity, and USA Gymnastics has allowed them to operate as the outside entity, mainly because there's not the budget in the men's program to bring the judging system in-house to do it. They can't hire. Now, on the women's side, they have people that work full-time in USA Gymnastics whose job is to run the women's judges. There's no one like that on the men's side. And the NGJA is run just like our regional chairman and state chairman of USA Gymnastics. They're all volunteers. And they're all good guys. Like I said, they're all good guys. And I believe, they're trying to do the right things. They're trying to make things better, but they're working against a history of 50 plus years of the good old boy system. And again, that was never really talked about too much. And so they are trying to change it, but USA Gymnastics, it's a delicate balance. Like they're not like, well, we can't really just take over the NGJA because we don't have the resources to bring it in-house. So we have to work with them. And everybody wants us to work together. I want to work together. I want to work with our local judge association. I want to work with the National Judge Association. And my contention has always been, okay, if you have an issue and you can't come to an agreement on it, who's the final authority? For instance, like for me, when I'm hosting my beach blast competition, I have to go through, the rules say, I have to go through my local association to assign the judges. So I have to work with them on who gets to come in and who comes in, and I have to pay them a fee to assign my judges to the meet. Now, it has never been an issue between me and our local assigner, who is a good friend of mine, but we've butted heads over this issue a lot the past 3 years. But technically they could say, well, no, we're not going to assign this person to your meet, or we're not. And I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense. I'm the one writing the check. I'm the one who's paying these judges to be here. So you're going to tell me that this person can't come for whatever reason, or you want this person to come? Now, it has never come to that, but that was a very long discussion between the MDPC and the MPC, and so we actually had to put together a committee of people, which is made up of the chairman of the MPC, the chairman of the MDPC, and whoever is the vice president of the development program for the NGJA. So if there is ever an issue when it comes to judges selection at an invitational meet or a state meet or a regional championships, if those two groups can't decide, then you can send it up the chain to that group and they will arbitrate it for you. It is never, as far as I know, it's been in place for 2 years now. It's never come to that. It was very close this year in Texas at one of the competitions, but we ended up all kind of getting it, worked out and figured out. So I understand the goal is to work together. Someone says, everybody's got to play nice in the sandbox. And we want to work it out, and we want to get things, but we're human, and we make mistakes, and we all have our own opinions and our own agendas, and so some people are like, no, I really want this, and other people are like, no, I really want this. Well, if those two people can't work it out and agree, what happens? And that's my question. What happens on that scenario?
Yeah, I think one of the things I have found most frustrating, sort of sitting back and watching this process, is I was a nationally rated judge, and then after one of the major incidents where a report was filed, the NGJA went and said, you cannot publicly discuss the problems with our judging association. Like, that is now part of the rules. And so I was like, well, I can't ever be a nationally rated judge again, because part of my job is to talk about the problems that are happening in the community so that we can bring awareness to them. And I think that that's a huge problem. I think that goes in the complete and total opposite direction of where the judging association needs to go. They should be so confident that they are running a good, true, and honest organization that they don't fear people posting publicly on social media. It's all about that. What that states to me is it's all about control. It is all about controlling the narrative and controlling the judges to make sure that the National Judges Association is allowed to save face. And I think it's wrong, and I think that they need to change that.
Well, and I like I said, I'm not shy with my opinions. And again, this is not personal. This is not personal to these guys, but they had, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, they had a group that came up with qualities of a good judge. And so they listed 13 qualities of a good judge, and everybody looked at it, and they were all kind of common sense things about what you do. Well, kind of at the end, there was an extra slide added in there that said one of the qualities of a good judge was not to say anything negative on social media. And I called the guy whose name was on the slide, and I had who's also a good friend of mine, and I had about a 2.5-hour conversation with him. And I was like, dude, this is so stupid and so wrong. And he was like, hey, I'm just the messenger. I was told by the higher ups to put this on there. And I'm like, well, this is stupid. I was like, are you really that? Everybody is that, like you said, not confident in their association that you can't say anything bad on social media. And this is all stemming from, there was a very contentious election for the NGJA president in 2020. And one of the candidates, he said everything that everybody knew that everybody was thinking, but no one was going to say it. And because if they did, they would get blackballed. And the most hilarious thing he said, if you talk bad about the NGJA, you will get blackballed. He said that on a video and put it out there. And he lost the election. The next year, he got to finish out the quad of judging. He was a high-level judge, judged USA Championships.
Wait, let's clarify that. When he said, if you speak out against the NGJA, you will be blackballed, he was stating his observation. He was not saying from a position of power, if you talk bad about me. I just want to clarify.
Correct. Yes.
He is not delivering a threat. Right. He is delivering an observation.
Yeah, he was observing and saying what everybody knew, that if you talk bad about the higher ups, you'll get blackballed. So he finished out that quad, and then the next quad, he got an email saying, well, we're going to give you a break, and you're not going to judge this year. Maybe we'll bring you back next year. And then they never brought him back, and now he's out of judging. And he was a great judge. He knew the rules. He was awesome. Coaches liked him. Judging my area in Houston, that now, we just don't have any judges in Houston anymore because a lot of them got frustrated and quit. So those kind of things were issues that, like I said, I think that the task force, one of the big things that the task force brought out, it said, was that, one, you get to nominate yourself. You don't have to, like you said, you don't have to go through somebody leadership to nominate you. They fixed that problem this year. They let everybody nominate themselves to go through. Which is a great change. It's good. Everybody can nominate. The issue, that I have is, okay, we still don't know who the selection committee is. There's still, as I said, still no minutes, still no independent observer, still no, we don't know what's happened. But the second thing that was going to happen, one of the things going to happen, and this was going to be a very big project, was for those judges who weren't selected, and for anybody, for there to be kind of a database of judges, that you had your own personal login information, that you could see strengths, weaknesses, critiques about yourself as a judge. Because this has always been the argument. Well, there's more to being a good judge than just getting the score right. And I agree, there is. I will say that getting the score right is 98% of it. And as we've seen recently, sometimes that's a challenge for judges. And hey, judges make mistakes. I get it. They do. They make mistakes. You just hope they don't make mistakes that they don't correct and they don't screw things up. But there's more that goes into it. I mean, you have to be able to get along with people. Especially at that level when you're at USA Championships, NCAA Championships, they say you got to be able to lead a panel. You got to be able to work with people on a panel. You've got to be able to communicate. You've got to be able to get along. You can't be a jerk to everybody. So there are these, what they call, kind of X factors with the judge, that go into whether you're a good judge or not. Now, Jonathan, when he gave us our meeting back at Winter Cup last year, he said, yes, there are these things, but they all need to be written down and they all need to be quantifiable. You can't just have in your head, well, I don't think this guy is a good judge, so we're going to keep him out. You need to have things that are quantifiable, that you can tell, and you give judges feedback. So after, like I said, this round of selections to the senior panel, I don't know of people who put their names in if they were communicated with, if they didn't get assigned and they said, hey, you're on your way up. I mean, I had another good friend who kind of in the same boat. He judged 9 USA championships. He judged Olympic trials several times. And he did some things that some people didn't like, but they kind of said, well, we're going to take you off the panel for a while. We'll get you back on in a year. And he never got put back on. And after the 5th year in a row of the list of assignments for the senior panel, which included Winter Cup, USA Championships, NCAA Championships, he wasn't on it. And he made a phone call to the leadership in our area, which is what it's supposed to do, and said, hey, my name's not on the list again. Can you tell me what happened? Was my name even brought up? Was it discussed? Was any of this? And all he was told was, you didn't get selected. It wasn't, these are the reasons why, anything else. And so he said at the time, he was like, well, I'm out then. He's like, I can't do this anymore. He's like, I'm tired of stressing out about it. He's like, I've dedicated too much time, effort, energy into doing this to get this stressed out about it. He's like, I'm just done. And that day he's like, forget it. I'm not gonna. He was supposed to go take the FIG test later in the year. That was when they did the online FIG test. I guess this was in 2021 or 2022 when they did the online FIG test. And he was just like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. He's like, I can't. And so he just walked away. And it wasn't because he didn't get assigned. And some people talked about him. It's like, oh, he's just mad they didn't get signed, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, had nothing to do with not getting assigned. He said it was that he didn't know. He was like, why did I keep doing this if I can't get any feedback? It was like, did I do something wrong? Did I screw up some way that I don't know about, and that's why I'm not being given the assignments? And again, he was a good judge, a very high-level Category 3 FIG judge. He judged several NCAA championships. I mean, he was, and he walked away, because of that. And I told the leadership of the NGJA that. I said, look, this guy left. He walked away. Somebody needs to reach out to him and say, hey, just talk to him. Just give him, tell him what's going on, and no one ever did. And so that's a big issue, in my opinion, that is starting to kind of get looked at. But I think that would be a big thing that the leadership could fix. They need to let these judges know, if you screw up, let them know they screwed up, because that's part of the problem that happens. People screw up and they don't tell them anything about it. I have my own story about that when I got blackballed for a year because somebody accused me of cheating and scoring my athletes too high and I didn't find out about it until 3 months later. But,
Yeah, I think that what I've sort of taken away from this and conversations I've had with many judges across many different generations is there are two things that really need to change. The first is that the NGJA needs to hire a qualitative researcher to go through and do interviews with all judges, current and those who have left, because there are so many talented judges that walked away for various reasons. Some because they weren't chosen, some because they didn't get the feedback they needed, some because they felt that they were blackballed because they spoke up. And I think if the NGGA really wants to make the changes that they have said they want to make, they have to go back and they have to dig up all of the bodies and they have to understand the problem. So that's number one. And then number two is exactly what you've been saying, is you have to provide feedback. And this is what I said even about the Michigan, Nebraska meet, is you don't want to immediately shut people down because they made major mistakes. You want to cultivate them and you want to grow them and you want to help them understand. And there needs to be some sort of system in place where if these major mistakes are made, then they aren't in fear of never getting an assignment again, that they know that they are going to be taken under the wing of, a great judge like Dan Bachman or Butch Zunich or John Corbett or Sho Nakamori, and they're going to be guided to be a better judge, and they will learn from that.
Well, your first suggestion is great, but you made an assumption that I don't know is accurate or not. Does the NGJA want to fix it? Do they want to get better? I don't know. I honestly don't know that they do. I know that, I've had a few conversations with John Corbett. I don't have a very close relationship with him, but my conversations with him have been good. And I like John. And I want to say that, yes, John wants to make things better and he does want to make the judges, but they have to have the right, they're not just going to get better just, or so this. Most people don't change unless they have reason to. So they have to kind of have a reason to change. And that reason needs to come from USA Gymnastics. USA Gymnastics has to put the pressure on them. And they kind of have with this task force. But like I said, this task force hasn't done anything over a year and no one knows what's going on with it. The people at USA Gymnastics have a lot going on and a lot of irons in the fire. So this has been something that was just kind of pushed to the back burner, mainly because the people who are complaining have kind of just quit complaining because they've lost the energy and everything else. So I hope that John has the motivation and the other leadership in the NGA to do these things and to look and to talk and say, hey, we do want to get better. We do want to make this organization not just better for the leadership, but better for everybody else. So I had a conversation with two guys who are, leaders within NGJA, and just talking to them about, their stories of how they came up in the NGJA and all the things that they had to go through. And it was the same. They came up through the same system. It was they had to have the right people push them forward and give them the opportunities. And it's like, hey, I felt like other guys were given opportunities ahead of me, and I didn't think it was fair, and I had to wait my turn, and I had to do this, even though I was a better judge. And so the one guy I told him, I was like, well, okay, you're sitting there telling me about all the hardship that you got through to get to the other side. Don't you want to make it better for the other guys coming up?
It reminds me of going through my PhD program, and we had professors in my PhD program who would constantly bemoan what their process was like and all the horrible things they had to do, and they were the ones who were the meanest to us in the program. And I had the exact same thought. Is like, okay, you had all of these horrible experiences. Don't you want to make it better? Like, it doesn't have to be like that anymore. But it's like this idea of because I suffered, you have to suffer, and I hate that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's and really, like I told my the conflicts I had with the local association. I was told, well, these guys were elected, elect somebody else. I was like, well, it's hard. That's hard. It's hard to. You shouldn't have to win an election to make change if things are bad. But when the people in charge have no motivation to fix things, then things are going to constantly stay the same. And that's what I heard at every step of the way of leadership of the NGJ that I went to. It was a lot the same thing. It's like, well, this is what I had to go through. I was like, okay, make it better. Just because you had to go through, make it better. And like I said, I'm in a unique position where I kind of came through it, but I'm on the outside looking in. So I can speak up and I can say things and not have to worry. Now I have people get mad at me, and I've had, people, really get really mad at me and had some very heated conversations. People that I consider my friends that I've worked with for years on different things, but some people just take this personally, and I was like, look, this is not personal, but let's make it better. But and also, again, these are my opinions, but when I see a lot of my friends, my very good friends, just get beat down by this, and who are just like, I just can't do it anymore. I mean, we lost, in my opinion, three of the best FIG judges in Texas in the past 4 years have quit because of just political things, because of you not giving the opportunity, for whatever reasons. And, and let's be honest, the people that are still in judging, a lot of them are glad they're gone. Because you know what? That just means everybody else moves up a notch. And they're just that much closer to getting the spots that they had. And that's kind of the problem with the system, too. There's not enough people, in my opinion, again, there's not a lot of people in the system who are like paying it forward, if you will. Saying, okay, I've had my shot to get to judge it. Let's bring these other people and give other people opportunity. I mean, there's people that have judged at the senior level 30 plus years, and it's hard to like say, okay, let's give new people the opportunity to let them judge. And it happens everywhere in every organization and things but I just hope for myself that I want to grow other people, and I want to grow other people to what I mean, like even in the role that I'm doing now. And part of the is, thing, Congress enacted with the Texas-Stevens Acts, I have term limits in my role as Region 3 chairman, which I think is the most ironic thing ever, that Congress that has no term limits, that they can serve in Congress for 60 plus years, decided that this group of volunteers in a Olympic sport has too much power, so we have to have term limits in what we do. So I'm now in, I think I'm entering my third year of my first term, and then I can do another 4-year term after that, and then somebody else has to take over. And that's another thing that that the task force brought up when it came to some of these judging assignments, is that maybe you only get to do it 2 years in a row, and then you have to take a year off. I know that the NCAA implemented that in NCAA championships. So there is some kind of precedent for that. And so I think there's a lot of things that can be done to make it better. I think people are trying. There are people there, and it is moving in the right direction. My frustration is we've already lost a lot of people because of it, and they just have to be, people they have to just want to change it. They have to want to get better. And I don't know, I haven't had enough conversations with them recently to find out if that is something they're motivated to get to do or not. But I know there's still judges involved that are frustrated. I know that you've had conversation with judges involved that are frustrated. I will say, as far as the actual judging goes, and I told the judges this after at Winter Cup and Elite Team Cup, I told them, I was like, I thought the judging was great at Winter Cup and Elite Team Cup. I thought the execution scores were right on par. I think we were all a lot of the coaches and were a little bit nervous because they had just taken the FIG test a few weeks before. So we were afraid they were just going to come in, just hacking everybody. But I didn't get that feeling. I thought the scores were fair, the scores were accurate, and the judges on the floor, the 18 judges on the floor at Winter Cup and Elite Team Cup did do a good job. And I like I said, I told them that at the competition, and told them that they did a good job. So I try to be just as complimentary to the judges as I am critical, and like I said, I'm not critical of them as people, it's really just, I want to see things done better. And I, same thing for myself in my role. Plenty of people, criticize me and what I do as Region 3 chairman, as the owner of my gym. There's different things, and I want to be someone who can, who wants to constantly get better as well. So if judges come out and say, hey, I think you could do X, Y, and Z better, I'm like, okay, let's talk about it and figure it out.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts and insights with us. I think that's a great place to wrap up on that positive note today. So if you would like to help bring more live men's gymnastics coverage to life, please consider donating. A massive thank you to everyone who has already donated. We are almost entirely listener supported, and these donations really do make a difference. If you would like to donate, you can donate via PayPal or Stripe, and the PayPal link is in every show note at the bottom of every article on neutraldeductions.com. If you have questions, comments, or insider tips, you can email Kensley at neutraldeductions@gmail.com. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.